people who have been in a coma, what was it like from your perspective? Did you know you were in a coma? I was in a coma for about 2 weeks following a cardiac arrest as a teen. I was technically dead for over an hour. In fact, people often ask me if I could hear my family talking to me or if I was dreaming. The answer is number. There is a huge hole in my memory beginning about 2 weeks before the coma through a week after waking up. And waking up is in quotes because I would wake up, ask a bunch of semi-incoherent questions, fall back under, then wake up again and ask the exact same questions, in the exact same order, repeat 6 or 7 times. The coma was not even blackness, it just does not exist. I remember having the hardest time believing it was actually mid-October when the last day I remembered was late September. I was in a coma for 3 days following a serious cycling accident, medically induced. I woke up with zero recollection of why I was there or what was said while I was out. It is easily the scariest situation I have found myself in, but I cannot say I remember it. I woke up to my mom and dad in the hospital with me and my body in traction of some sort, and that was way scarier to me. The person I knew in a coma was in it for about 3 weeks and had no recollection of being in a coma. The doctor was saying his name real loud and he finally woke up one day. The doctor asked him if he was insert real name. The patient said yes. And whom do I have the pleasure of speaking to? Back to the doctor. I had a seizure and was in a medically induced coma for 3 days when I was 17. To be honest, I don't remember anything. I remember fading in and out of the anesthesia, trying to pull my breathing tube out and that my hands were restrained to the bed so I couldn't. When I woke up and was coherent, I couldn't recall anything from actually being in the coma. They had even moved me to a hospital over 100 miles away. It was really just nothing but black. No dreams, no lights, no voices, just nothing. Dunno, I was in a coma for 11 days. Severe brain injury. I don't remember being in a coma or waking up from a coma. I lost several years of memories prior to the coma, and my brain didn't really start to retain information again until 6 weeks after I came out of the coma. I am told that my personality changed afterwards. I had to rebuild most areas of my life. It sucked, but it was probably a good thing. Although I'd be lying if I said I never wondered what my life would be like if I'd never had a coma. When I was a kid, my best friend got hit by a car at age 12. She was in a coma for I think a little over a year. She said she felt like she was asleep but was most freaked out when she woke up and saw that she had gone through puberty while in the coma. Some would consider not having to consciously live through puberty to be a good thing, but like, imagine waking up with a different body. I was in a medically induced coma following a self-inflicted gunshot wound. I do not remember much, but my family described moments of me appearing to be awake. Most notable, an apparent attempt at humor. Apparently they put these mitts on my hands to prevent me from ripping my ventilation tubes out over and over, but I pretended they were my lobster claws. I have no recollection, but it is a real meme move. My girlfriend of 6 years and sort of fiancé was in a severe car crash when she was 16. Both of her best friends died instantly. She was the only survivor, but they did not think she would make it. She was in a coma for 9 months. She was in what is called a waking coma. She retained normal periods of sleep and open-eyed wakefulness, but no higher brain functions. Here are some things about her experience. She does not have any memories of the year prior or the year and a half-ish after her coma, and obviously no memories of the car crash. She suffered a TBI, and when she first got out of the coma she would get naked and sexual with people and anger very easily. These are common problems of people who suffer a TBI. She went back to school after the coma, but her brain was still healing a lot. She was held back another year because her brain was still not retaining anything. Today she is a wonderful, bright 30-year-old with a college degree. She has a slight speech impediment, gets frustrated easier than most, and it took her a while to get driving down. Honestly, she still scares the heck out of me when she drives, but there are worse drivers out there. After being in a really bad accident that left one of my good friends, the driver, brain dead, they put me into a chemically induced coma for under a week to prevent brain damage due to swelling. When I first woke up, My memory was much better than it was as it gradually faded in the days to come. I have a journal my mother recorded things in, and I recalled many things I shouldn't have been able to immediately after waking up. Today, I have very little memory of it all, but I can definitely say that having positive people around you definitely helps when you are in a situation like that. If you have a friend in this situation, don't disregard them, even though your life has moved on. They may wake up one day, and in their mind, not a day has passed since the last conversation they had with you. I am not sure where I read it, but a girl talked about her experience and she mentioned that it was like going in and out of sleeping dreaming. Just when she would feel like she was waking up, she could hear parts of conversations or the TV, but she would slip right back to sleeping. She also said when people would clean her she could feel them touch sensitive parts of her like her armpit and butthole area. I am an inpatient phlebotomist, and even though some of my patients are sedated, I still always introduce myself and say I am here to draw some blood, just in case they could hear me. I was put in an induced coma when I was 9 years old after a pretty bad car accident which left me with a fractured skull. All I remember is a bad dream about having a bad headache, and hearing my older sister telling everyone, including my parents, to get the duck out of her way because she wanted to see me. I found out later that this was on the night it happened, and they were trying to calm her down before she saw me. Edit: for those who are telling me to let her know how awesome she is, I made sure to, not quite but almost, hug the life out of her when she got back from work. Ooh, I can answer this one. I was in a medically induced coma for 2 weeks. About 3 months ago, I had open heart surgery. It did not go well, had trouble coming off the ventilator, so they just put me in a coma to try to give me time to heal. I had nightmares the entire time from the medicine they were using to knock me out. I thought I had been kidnapped by a nurse and was a victim of trafficking. I thought my drug addict aunt had her friends rob my sister and her husband, killing my brother-in-law and one of their children, and I thought I was constantly being grabbed by people under my bed. It was not fun. I cannot say that I knew I was in a coma or anything. I am usually one of those people that when I have a bad dream, I can tell myself it is just a dream and wake myself up in order to end it. This was not like that. I was convinced it was all really happening. I was in a coma for 3 days after an emergency C-section thanks eclampsia. They actually lost me for a couple of minutes after they delivered my twin boys. I remember hearing the sound of my dad crying close by. I could hear people talking around me, but any time I would try to focus on what I thought I was seeing, it was like looking in a kaleidoscope. 4 days or so. Traumatic brain injury. I knew time was passing but not sure how fast. I can remember people being in the room with me, eyes were taped shut, and people taking. A few years ago my dad was in a medically induced coma for about 2 weeks. Everyone thought he was completely unconscious the whole time until he woke up and started mentioning conversations people had around him while he was under. This even surprised the doctors. He said that from his perspective it was like he was asleep most of the time, but he would occasionally wake up and could hear what was going on around him without being able to move or do anything before he would eventually drift back to sleep. This is really bizarre, but my uncle, a very serious, strict and rather dry man, had an accident and went into coma a few years back. He never believed anything he could not touch. No talks about souls or anything similar. He was in coma for a few weeks until he woke up and had this crazy-as duck story. He said he saw himself in a bubble, floating around in a white place, and it was peaceful and beautiful. But then he said about other bubbles he could see around him. All of them had other people in them. He distinctly remembered a black-haired woman singing in the bubble closest to his until one day her bubble bursted and she disappeared. When he woke up he could give a very clear description of her body, age, all that. Now the crazy bit, there was a woman, 1 floor below him, in a coma that sadly had passed away before he woke up. You guessed it, black hair, age, body, all correct. He had never met or seen this woman in his life. His whole idea of life changed after this. It still makes me think sometimes, where was he? He thinks all the people in bubbles around him were patients in the same hospital. Could it be? We will probably never know. My husband was in a coma for a couple weeks. He got pneumonia his freshman year of college. The coma was medically induced because he had a really bad immune system or something. He told me all he remembered was waking up really confused and with a really full beard. AMD when he did wake up, he was still in a lot of pain, so they gave him a ton of medicine and it made him kinda high, and he was not all there when his friends visited. I was in a coma for 3 days. Unlike most people, I definitely knew time was passing, but did not know I was in a coma. I kept having weird hallucinations about running a restaurant with my brother, and I kept getting confused and wondering where I was and why I wasn't managing the restaurant. I've never worked at a restaurant and I am not sure why my brother was involved. Life didn't feel real for a few months following waking up. Edit dreams to hallucinations because it fits better. A friend of mine was in a 6-month coma after an accident. Afterwards he made sure to tell everyone around him to talk to people in a coma because they can hear you, but he noted that they should always tell the person in a coma what happened, where they are and what is happening to them, because he said that his moments of lucidity were mixed with some truly horrifying dreams and he had trouble distinguishing between what was real and what were dreams. He said he just wanted to be told what was real and what was happening. I was out for 45 days, no white light, no tunnel, nothing, woke up and could not remember who I was, for 6 months, never really fully recovered, so I just started life again. Turns out I am a completely different person than I was, and that is a really good thing. I get memories now and then, they are not pleasant. A woman came and sat by my bed for 6 weeks, turns out she was my ex-lover. I could not remember her, did not recognize my mother. Afterward, this is the second time in my life I have related this much about my life publicly, and it has been good and at the same time really painful. Thanks to everyone for being kind. I wrote this story 7 months ago and published it in the lounge, and I really hurt myself doing it. This time I wanted to share about the life afterwards, and I hope it has been of some benefit to others that struggle with mental issues. This place saves lives, gives hope and guidance to millions of people, and I feel lucky to be part of the community. My grandma had terminal pancreatic cancer and stage 3 lung or liver cancer. Can't remember, she went into a coma when her body was preparing for death. I know she could hear us though. BC when I was in the room by myself with her, I was telling her how much I loved her and she grunted and smiled. I know this will get buried, but I will post my experience anyway. I went to the hospital with renal failure and a pulse ox reading of 32. I remember the nurse saying my pee looked like root beer, and when she stabbed my arm to give me Infor, all she said was uh-oh. My arm got really warm and my dad moved my head so I wouldn't see how much blood was coming out. Next thing I know, I am in a hospital bed, tearing through the desert at 60+ miles per hour. Nothing but me and a hospital bed, no motor, nothing, just cruising through the desert. I'd see all sorts of weird things. Most specifically was Ronald McDonald. I saw him all the time. Then my hospital bed would come to a screeching halt and I'd be in the living room of someone I knew, grandma, good friends, former coaches, basically in a living room I had spent time in with someone I cared about. The weird thing was the living rooms were always 3-walled. One wall was missing and beyond that wall was a barren desert. We would talk for a while about God knows what, then I'd be pulled back into the desert cruising at 60 miles per hour again. It happened over and over again. Sometimes the same living rooms would reappear, but almost all of them were unique. When I came out of the coma, everyone kept commenting how good my hair looked. I couldn't figure out why they kept saying that, so I finally asked my mom how long I had been asleep. She said 13 days, and I had cards and flowers from all these people whose living rooms I'd been visiting in my coma. It was surreal and I definitely can't explain it, especially since most of the cards came from people who weren't allowed to visit me in intensive care and were sending well wishes in writing, not in person. My brother-in-law was in a coma for a month after a car accident in which he lost his eye and almost died. He is said that he had a vision of God holding him underwater 3 times, almost drowning him the 3rd time, then him giving up and finally being led up into his hometown. He has had one almost fatal accident after that. And while I am not superstitious, I do believe sometimes reality can echo the future in ways which our minds can perceive sometimes, even if we cannot fully interpret those echoes. Well, I simply believe he is eventually going to have a third accident. I fear for him. My mom was in a coma and she recently told me it was horrible. She was in a wreck that killed her technically 5+ times. Heart stopped and she said she could feel all the pain, hear the doctors yelling that she was being coded. She said she thought to herself, wow, whoever that, it must be dying, and then realizing it was her. She was trying to scream and tell them she was alive, but nothing ever came out. My friend was in a coma about 10 years ago for roughly 3 weeks. Car accident. When he woke up we visited him, and when I was alone with him he told me it was like a lucid dream. The real world was gone and he felt like he was in a world he could create himself for years. He was dead serious too. He talked on and on about how he had a slight understanding that he was not in the real world anymore and that he thought he might be in heaven. About how he felt like he was actually dying and his last few seconds just stretched on and on forever. He said that is what it felt like. He mentioned that he could fly in the coma dream and that it was amazing. He spent a little while in the hospital, then went home, did physical therapy for about 2 weeks before killing himself with pain pills and vodka. People thought the pain was too much, that it was an accidental overdose, or that the therapy and the accident made him feel helpless and depressed. Honestly, I think he wanted back into his lucid dream world. The way he talked about it was like the best thing he ever experienced. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.